handle the truth.
Hello, welcome to Truth versus News for December 17th. We're getting close to Christmas and all kinds of exciting things are happening here. And so I'd just like to welcome you to the show with the most dangerous mind in America, Jim Fetzer, and also Scott Bennett. And in this time of impeachment and other things, we're seeing quite chaos here. And I want to start off with a little quick quote here. Right here, it says that America is ruled by lies. Truth is completely absent, and the American population tolerates it. Rule by lies is now the American way. And when truth is politicized, all is lost. That's Paul Craig Roberts saying that on the 13th. And I'm afraid that's sort of the way it is. Isn't that right, guys? That we're sort of in this kind of situation where our show is not only truth versus news, it's truth versus the establishment. So it's pretty heavy here. So let's get going here. And let's just jump over to England and see what's going over there.
Well, you're right, Don. I mean, the establishment isn't happy with the truth and therefore wants to suppress it. We have a triumphant success by Boris Johnson, who's been viewed as the Donald Trump of the UK, which is sending shivers up the spine to Democrats. Johnson's Tories won 365 seats in the lower chamber. Labour, the Liberals picking up only 203. It was the biggest majority for the Conservatives since the days of Margaret Thatcher, worst showing for Labour since the 1930s. It's a lesson many in the UK and the US are saying should be a warning for Democrats who may think that victory lies with an uncompromising agenda featuring government, healthcare, immigration, enforcement, rollbacks, and more. Democrats like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have promoted far-reaching programs like Medicare for All and the halt to deportations of illegal immigrants, leading some to fear they may be out of step with the country. Also, comparisons have drawn between the British left's effort to thwart Brexit and the Democrats' push to impeach Trump rather than beat him at the ballot box. Those who voted for Brexit and Trump don't take kindly to their Democratic vote being abused this way, and their retribution comes at the ballot box. If people think Boris Johnson's earthquake was big, just wait until the Senate acquits President Trump and he uses that victory to storm to re-election. Not only that, but we have the bizarre event that the Fusion GPS founder is claiming that Boris Johnson's victory in England was due to Russia. Insanity continues. The guy whose fingerprints are all over the discredited Russian collusion hoax is now ginning up efforts to undermine the UK election on the very same basis. I mean, this is bizarre. Maybe he thinks the world is still credulous to believe him. They might have been at one time, but the more we learn about his prominent role in perpetrating a fraud that launched a process of weaponizing law enforcement and intel agencies against a political candidate selected by the will of the people in America, less likely are his lies to take root. Before the British even had another chance to cast their vote, he was lurking to derail another set of election results. Get this, Glenn Simpson and Peter Frisch penned an editorial in The Guardian, a British paper, asserting Russia was behind the triumphant re-election of Brexit, supporting Conservative Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Simpson and Frisch are now urging the British government to launch an investigation into Russian interference in its election, mirroring the size and scale of the U.S. Robert Mueller probe, a 2-year investigation that did irreparable harm to the U.S. based upon a web of lies. Britain needs its own Mueller report on Russian interference, the editors said. The British political system has become thoroughly compromised by Russian influence, Simpson and Frisch declared. In 2016, both the UK and the US were targets of Russian efforts to swing their votes. The aim was to weaken the alliances that constrained Vladimir Putin's ambitions, such as the European Union and NATO. such complete and total rubbish. Scott, your thoughts, my friend?
Well, the Brexit separation of Britain from the socialist bloc of European nations is something that a lot of people have been talking about for a long time. That's been required. The only advantage of Britain and the European continent becoming one unit, in a sense, was simply to make it easier for travel between countries and nations, so you weren't stopped at every border for passport control or immigration documents. And yes, there were some free trade, easements and things like that. But what it has turned into has been this leviathan of socialism. And that's what the British people have been pushing against. The British people in Europe, for all extents and purposes, really represent the closest proximity to the American independent pioneer, free enterprise spirit. They really have that much more than anyone in Europe. I mean, I've been in Europe and I know British people. I was born in Scotland. The British have a much more independent, fiercely nationalistic identity in their root, in their core, than anyone really else. Germany's always been socialist and communist. They're not communist necessarily, but in a flavor of it. And they were the ones who pushed this pan-European socialism, unelected bureaucracy in Brussels that can define everything from chocolate to how much fish in the sea you can catch, et cetera, et cetera. And that's always been very offensive to British independent thinkers. And that's what they've rebelled against. That's what they've said, this is the last straw. That's what Nigel Farage has really championed. Now, they may have done it the wrong way or the right way or the clumsy way or the articulate way, depending on your own communication and cultural understandings, but they've done it nevertheless. And I think that's what Boris Johnson and that's what Theresa May failed to do and failed to understand. They all were falling over themselves about how to do this and why to do this. It was like they were still poisoned by the sickness of socialism, and they finally got a whiff of Donald Trumpism, and they've kind of bashed through that china shop. So I think what we're going to see is Britain really circle their wagons and reaffirm Britain is about Britons, not about people in Europe. And they're going to push that forward. And that could spread to the nightmare that Germany has and all socialists have, George Soros has, to the breakup of the Union and the return to independent states. And that's ironically the safest place for peoples and also the most prosperous place for economies, because when you localize things down on the country level, things become a lot more healthy economically. They always stagnate and turn almost gangrene with government interference when you have large socialistic blocks. And that's why, I think Putin, of course, I don't think the Russians had anything to do with anything remotely related to this, but it is an interesting sign of desperation by these political actors that will blow back and haunt them. And you're right, Jim. Trump is going to use all of this to his victory.
Yeah, the position here of Glenn Simpson is simply absurd. Meanwhile, Trump has been touting the IG report on the FBI surveillance of the campaign. Even though the Horowitz claimed they had an authorized purpose, he has laid out 17 inaccuracies involving 3 applications filed under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which inflated the Bureau's justification for surveillance against Carter Page. And get this, Carter Page, it turns out, was actually working as an informant for the CIA in relation to his Russian contacts, so that the FBI knew that what Carter Page was doing in dealing with the Russians was informing our own intelligence agencies, but they suppressed that information and going about getting this completely improper FISA surveillance justification. We have U.S. Attorney John Durham, who's a very serious guy, declaring he does not agree with the Inspector General's conclusion about the investigation having had a warrant or justification. Based on the evidence collected to date while our investigation is ongoing, Last month, we advised the Inspector General we do not agree with some of the report's conclusions as to predication, meaning how the inquiry was launched and how the FBI case was opened, Durham said in a statement sent to reporters. The Horowitz report found there were serious performance failures by the supervisory and not supervisory agents with these 17 significant errors, and nevertheless claimed there was no evidence of intentional misconduct. Frankly, I find that completely absurd. Obviously, these kinds of discrepancies, which were major forms of false information, were deliberate. How could any serious person have any doubt? Our investigation has included developing information from other persons and entities, both in the US and out, said Durham, who continues to investigate the origins of the Russia investigation. Attorney General Barr also stated skepticism of the Horowitz report concerning that the FBI officials launched the investigation on the thinnest of suspicions that were, in his words, insufficient to justify the steps taken. Comey, now in a move to CYA, is saying he was wrong in thinking that the FBI was handling all this properly. This was in an interview with Chris Wallace just this weekend. Comey said, he's right, I was wrong in relation to the report from the Inspector General. I was overconfident as director in our procedures of the FBI and justice have built over 20 years. I thought they were robust enough. It's incredibly hard to get a FISA. I was overconfident in those because he's right, there was real sloppiness. 17 things that should have been in the application, or at least discussed and characterized differently. It was not acceptable, so he's right, I was wrong. Not only that, but Trump is ripping up on impeachment. All of this nonsense, including the IG report, here during a campaign rally in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and the guy is masterful at these performances. We talk about Reagan as a great communicator. I think really that title belongs to Donald Trump. It all started with a Russia witch hunt, Trump told a campaign rally in Hershey. Then the Inspector General's shocking report proved the Obama FBI obtained secret warrants to spy on my campaign based on a phony foreign dossier of debunked smears paid for by crooked Hillary Clinton and the DNC. Scott, he's going to make much of this during the campaign. Your thoughts?
Well, it's something to behold because we've known this for a long time. We've known this for over 2 years. There are all sorts of other insidious explanations for why this whole thing has started in the first place, because we've seen the very early beginnings of this. I've seen the suspicious origins of this since 2012. When I came upon evidence that Brad Birkenfeld had presented to me that indicated it started back in 2007, 2008, and then 2009 when he was imprisoned by Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer and Hillary Clinton and Tim Geithner, the Justice Department working with the State Department to enable and continue the financing of Wahhabi terrorists through Saudi banks, and specifically through UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland, Saudi banks, and other financiers that Brad Birkenfeld was the personal banker of. And they threw him in jail and confiscated over 19,000 Swiss bank accounts and hundreds of millions of dollars. And it was all continued to be money laundered through the Clinton Foundation. And why Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch and all these people haven't put that front and center and really broadcast it is a mystery, but I think it cannot help but come out now because of all the other contributing factors. And we're going to see this impeachment situation unfold. All of this evidence will come out, all of the backstory, all of all the chatter. You're going to see the movie. You know, this what we've seen so far has been the preview of what the movie is, but now, or the trailer. Now we're going to sit down for the full 2-hour CinemaScope Ben-Hur movie of the chariot race, if you will, with Donald Trump and the evil Clinton whipping at him until her chariot goes bonkers and crashes, and she gets thrown and run over by Bernie Sanders and the rest of it. All of this is going to be played out, and you're going to have people brought in to testify in evidence if it goes to the Senate. But Jim, the ironic thing is, I don't think the Democrats are going to take this to the Senate. I think they're going to stop short because they realize if they cross the line and take this to the Senate for a full impeachment judgment, then the whole thing is not just going to blow up, it's going to go nuclear, because you're going to have the Republicans in the driver's seat able to call Hunter Biden, able to call Joe Biden, able to call the president of Ukraine, able to call Brad Birkenfeld, able to call Julian Assange, able to call Edward Snowden, Scott Bennett, a whole list of whistleblowers and people that have contributing information about the deep state operations under Hillary Clinton and the Department of Justice and Barack Obama, all of which paint a background of government corruption, intelligence abuse, the weaponization of information, the crimes that were being conducted, that the weaponization of the U.S. government intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies was intended to conceal. As Hillary Clinton said, we will all hang if he gets elected. The reason she said that were because of the crimes that she was doing, from the 33,000 emails that went missing on her server that she destroyed, that contained information like the shell game Swiss bank issue that Birkenfeld had exposed, that also contained other things, from pedophilia to Haiti to Chinese corruption, which is a huge matter. All of this stuff will be brought out in the Senate if they go that far, and I hope they do, but I don't think they will. Plus, again, Donald Trump could testify at the Senate. And you're right, Jim, Donald Trump is at his best when he's on stage performing, but the Democrats are probably going to take it right up to the line and then pull it back and say, we're not going to impeach because we couldn't get a fair trial, or they don't like us up there, or we just don't want to put the country through this. Well, that's a bunch of lies, because they know they'd lose. And that's when Trump is really going to crush them and say, you've spent millions and millions of dollars on another fake impeachment that you don't even have the balls or the courage to carry into the Senate and close the deal. I want to go to the Senate. I want everybody to testify. I want to expose these people before the full sunlight so they shrivel up as the worms they are. And that's why Comey and the rest of these people are trying to pull back. But they're all pathological too, Jim. They are pathologically deluded with their own past power as government representatives, thinking that they're Captain America, when in fact they were like some figure from a Scarface mafia film running a corrupt entity, and now they're being held to account by the American people, by the real American president, who is passionate, if not now obsessed with exposing this deep state, because it's been attacking him from every angle, but he's fought it off. He hasn't backed down. He hasn't submitted to them. He has stood his ground, and now they are exhausted and panting and on their bellies. They're like the priests of Baal that have been trying to call down fire from heaven, and it's never worked. And now Trump is going to call fire from heaven through the prayers of the American people, and I think totally decimate the entire Democrat establishment in one blow in the next 6 months.
Wow.
I think something like that, one way or another, is highly likely to occur. McConnell has announced Trump has no chance of being removed in an exclusive interview with Sean Hannity. He was quick to point out the impeachment sham is highly partisan, with the realization Trump's actions don't amount to high crimes and misdemeanors. The case is so damn weak coming from the House, he told viewers in a massive understatement. We know how it's going to end. There's no chance the president's going to be removed from office. The Kentucky Republican noted he expects some Democrats to break away from the Senate vote, likely to be held swiftly after a break in January. My hope is there won't be a single Republican who votes for either of these articles of impeachment. And Sean, it wouldn't surprise me if we got one or two Democrats. He's talking about the Senate. Don't overlook Mitt Romney, Mitch, however. Democrats bailing might be a trend. House Majority Whip James Clyburn, by the way, admitted earlier this week he expects to lose some Democratic votes in the House due to the divisive nature of impeachment. I do believe when it comes to something as divisive as impeachment, we have to leave members up to their own conscience. We do expect to lose some. If the Mitch fits, you must acquit. Report surface indicating McConnell has every intention of making sure he's acquitted. Two Republican senators have said he's going to push for a vote to acquit the president rather than to simply dismiss the charges. Are Democrats fleeing a sinking impeachment ship? The Washington Post is reporting that Democrats, not Republicans, will see defections in the impeachment vote, maybe even a lot of them. Even the low-end estimate they're reporting indicates at least 6 Democrats are expected to switch sides. Washington Post uses paywall, so we'll point our readers to the Breitbart version for reference. These guys quote 3 senior House Democratic officials saying there will be at least a half a dozen Democrats who joins with the Republicans to oppose impeaching President Trump. A third senior Democrat said there might be more than just a half a dozen. Lawmakers and senior aides are privately predicting they'll lose more than the 2 Democrats who oppose the impeachment inquiry rules package in late September. 2 seniors said the total could be as many half a dozen, a third higher. Generally speaking, if leadership of the majority is publicly speaking, they expect at least a half a dozen defections a week before the actual vote. The number of defections on said vote is likely to be much higher. It's remarkable Democrats are now readily admitting they'll lose at least 6, probably more. We know Jeff Van Drew, Democrat of New Jersey, will vote against articles of impeachment just as he voted against opening the impeachment inquiry to begin with. But we now have breaking news today, Scott. The House Democrats are claiming they have enough votes to impeach the president that freshmen are going to walk the plank for Pelosi. On Monday afternoon, the Democrats garnered enough support from the vulnerable Trump district Democrats and now have enough votes to impeach President Trump, we have been told. Assuming no defections before the vote actually takes place, the House will be able to impeach Trump this week when they vote on 2 articles of impeachment. At least 17 of the 31 endangered Democrats in conservative-leaning districts have publicly stated they will vote yay to impeach President Trump. Scott, they're running a risk. I don't think they're going to be coming back to the House.
Their major.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Can I just say that if they don't have any hard evidence of a real impeachable offense, all these guys in there are committing sedition. I mean, and I've said that in the past, and I think that's true. That this overthrow that they're trying to do with this coup is something that is punishable by 20 years in prison, and so they should be aware of the consequences of pursuing something that is essentially illegal. Go ahead.
Well, you know, the major key miscalculation that the Democrats have made in this communication strategy, this entire thing, the major miscalculation that they've done, and it's part of their genetic disposition to arrogance. And I mean, typical in that liberal Democrat left-wing mentality is arrogance and fascism and suppression of anything that is relating to God or the family or free enterprise or you know, anything happy and prosperous and elevating. I mean, I saw this in Hong Kong, and I'm not going to go into it now, but I was just in Hong Kong, and I really saw the true face of communist menacing China, and it was an incredible awakening. I was up close and personal with these combat thugs, and I saw the real Hong Kong people, and it's totally different from the Venezuela regime change and all the other crap that the CIA does. This is totally different. These are it's a totally different environment and people. These really are freedom fighters trying to struggle against a menace, but not to get sidetracked. I'll talk about that next week, I know. But the major miscalculation are the people of the United States of America that will stand up and yell and scream with a howling rage at this whole impeachment attempt when it really comes to the voting situation coming November. You won't see this until the last 3 months, and it will really quicken in the last 2 weeks. But you will see Americans who have kept bottled up inside of them this awareness that this impeachment whole thing has been totally poisonous and damaging, and they're going to let it go. They're going to blow it out like they've never done before, just like they did against John Kerry in 2004. That was not the Republican Party. Those were swift boat ads by independent citizens who were in Vietnam, who know him. Yeah, there was big money that backed it and stuff, but that was perceived as a grassroots awakening and an attack against Kerry because of his lies. The same thing, I think, will be happening in this impeachment situation. American citizens will be rising up. The Democrats can't perceive this because in their mind, everybody's stupid unless you're a Democrat in Congress. But people are going to wake up and they're going to be outraged because what the Democrats have done is they've, the American political continent is like a big ship, and every citizen is on that ship. And the Democrats have gone and they've tried to dismantle the rudder. They've tried to chop down one of the sails. They're trying to alter this and that and do all sorts of changes that threaten the lives of every American, because this is forcibly trying to change through a coup d'etat the nature of the American republic. And the Democrats don't care. They're pathological. They are screaming with axes and saws and trying to hack and change and hammer away parts of the American political ship, which is Donald Trump. And every American is looking at them with a bafflement, with a sense of, are these people crazy? And that's going to transform over the next 6 to 9 months into not just a bafflement and they're crazy, but an outrage, a roaring, aggressive outrage, which will manifest in people going to polling places, having flags, having banners, having blowhorns that will be saying things like, with probably a rude sense of almost violence. These Democrats have tried to overthrow this country, overthrow this president. They've threatened my grandchildren, my children. They threatened our republic. They're trying to turn us into a socialist fascism state. I will die before I let that. You want to unleash a civil war? I'll show you how to win a civil war. Those kind of words and energy is going to be unleashed, not because Trump is a perfect guy, but because the American people are not going to tolerate this sort of forced social communist overthrow that is reminiscent of the Nazis back in was it the night of Kristallnacht, or the night of the when they overthrew Hindenburg or the Kaiser in the elections and blamed all the sorts of stuff. This has that kind of color of flavor, and every American, this is even more palpable because everyone's looking and they're saying, is this all you have? Is this all you have with regards to this Russia hoax and now Ukraine? You're telling us because he made a phone call to Ukraine, you're going to call that government corruption? When every American with a brain knows that he called Ukraine because of corruption. He called Ukraine to say, look into this server, look into Fusion GPS, look into everybody that worked for Hillary Clinton, that penned op-eds against me. Look at all this operation that was going on, because Ukraine was an intelligence agency of the United States Clinton Foundation, the Clinton White House that was seeking to establish itself. That's what this was about, is exposing this George Soros Ukraine political corruption. And it also links to Nancy Pelosi and her son, Paul Pelosi Jr. It's already been linked to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. It's going to be linked to other people, perhaps John Kerry and his son. It's going to be linked to Victoria Nuland and all of the people that were putting together cases against Manafort and all this stuff. All of this is coming out, and I think it's going to be increasingly simple to understand for Americans, and they're going to unleash a backlash like they've never before. And anybody that walks the plank for Nancy Pelosi, I think they're going to be wiped out. Now, Trump can, write an op-ed or something saying the Democrats that are reasonable come to the side of reason. Jim?
I was interviewed by Sputnik News, which may be the leading international news service about impeachment, and I provided a critique very comparable to what you're offering. We know, of course, that Mitch McConnell is dropping the hit about a quick trial. As I explained, the impeachment effort will not only fail to remove Trump from office, but is likely to backfire on the Democratic Party during the 2020 elections. As things stand, it looks like the Democrats will go down hard. I suggested the impeachment inquiry launched by Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff was driven by fear of the Democrats' landslide defeat in 2020, where the president they despise has been succeeding beyond anyone's wildest expectations. As Representative Al Green observed, if we don't impeach this guy, he will get reelected. But it appears increasingly probable that even impeaching Trump is not going to save the Democrats from political annihilation in next year's election, giving four major reasons why. First, the Democrats don't have a viable candidate. Neither Joe Biden, tarnished by the focus on Ukraine's Burisma, nor the rich white New York billionaire Michael Bloomberg seem to be a feasible option, let alone former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Second, 31 Democrats who gained their seats in the House during the 2018 midterms in red states Trump won in 2016 run the risk of losing their seats if they support his impeachment. Third, after nearly 3 years of nonstop, highly biased mainstream reporting about the Russia interference hoax, the American public has grown weary of the demonization of Donald Trump, adding that CNN ratings have dropped to a 3-year low given the nonstop 24/7 impeachment coverage, while Fox, with its more balanced coverage, is rising. Fourth, during the week following the announcement of the impeachment inquiry, Trump's approval ratings increased by 5%. It had been 46%, but climbed to 51%. Moreover, in key swing states, his head-to-head comparisons with a leading Democrat similarly improved, and that remains the case today. To further illustrate, I cited the latest Marquette Law School poll, which indicates in Wisconsin, Trump was leading Democrat front runners Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren 47-44, 48-45, 48-43, respectively. Prior to moving toward impeachment, Biden, Sanders, and Warren all led Trump. Poll numbers don't reflect the real state of affairs, moreover, because historically they underestimate Trump support by about 5%. So the situation is actually even more favorable for the president than the numbers reflect. Moreover, Trump enjoys nearly 90% from the Republicans, leaving a zero chance for Democrats to remove him from office. That's half the story, since Republicans may proceed with their own investigation into to apparent bias against Trump and call Joe and Hunter Biden, as you were suggesting, Scott, the so-called whistleblower, even Adam Schiff, as witnesses. Michael Fierstein, a hedge fund manager, echoes me by dubbing the impeachment process as nothing short of a diversion by House Democrats Pelosi, Schiff, and Nadler. U.S. Constitution has a mechanism for impeaching a president only if he commits high crimes and misdemeanors. The current congressional proceedings are a sham. The probability of removing Trump is zero. Citing the recent FISA report by Inspector General Horowitz and U.S. Attorney John Durham's investigation into the so-called Trump-Russia probe, also known as Operation Crossfire Hurricane, Fierstein suggests the inquiries may result in indictment. The Horowitz report, of course, we know was published Monday with procedural violations. Durham's issued an official statement about non-agreement. It looks very much as though the situation is just as Ben Garrison has portrayed in a political cartoon. Full speed ahead. The Democrats are going down hard. Scott,
well, you know, it's funny. I did not know that you had that graphic up there, Jim, of the ship, the wooden ship. I didn't know that until I just saw that. I guess we were thinking alike, because I think that's very true. They're breaking and destroying the ship of the American state. The American people know that. The Republican conservative types, the only thing that has restrained them from yelling and screaming and beating and tarring and feathering these Democrat liberals throughout history, really, but in the last 5 years particularly, has been their own civil restraint. The Republican conservative type of person is a very restrained, intelligent, rational, economic, socially minded, religious, family-oriented person, typically. Black, Mexican, Hispanic, Asian, white, it doesn't matter. We all share a similar thread of just equilibrium and conservatism. The whole nature of conservatism, as I studied when I was doing my doctorate, was under Klaus Rinn. You're conserving the bank and capital of the ages, the great discoveries and traditions of history and civilization that work, that are meaningful, that give substance to our lives, that give energy to our endeavors, that give safety to our life and our children and such. That's what conservatism is. Liberal leftism has been to destroy all that in a flock of chaos, in a fire of jubilant human liberation. But after the bonfire, everything is ashes. And you don't have any housing, you don't have any buffalo, you don't have any teepees, you don't have any arrows. So you're a bunch of savages dying on the open plains. That's the real reality of liberal leftism. But what's going to happen again? The American people's political instincts are going to kick in about 6 to 9 months from now. They are going to increasingly become vocal and violent, not necessarily beating in the streets, but they are going to be violent against these accusations and these lies. This entire drama has been based on lies, and the American people know it. Their own good instincts have restrained them from speaking out and calling them liars. But I think the American public are seeing that they're at a crossroads. If they do not get up off their butts and with a baseball bat, in a sense, hammer these liberals away from stopping what they're doing, the whole ship of America risks complete sinking. And the Democrats don't see that. They will never see that because they're pathological. They're so consumed with hatred and vileness for themselves because they've lost the election. They will never give up. And that's where Trump really is going to win, because the Democrats, Jim, you could see the Democrats lose like they've never lost an election in the history of the United States of America. I'm talking 3/4 of their whole voter constituencies wiped out. Ocasio-Cortez wiped out. The new moderates that came in that are in vulnerability, that are on the middle of the road, wiped out. Because, again, they haven't calculated for the independent American voices that will rise up, and the rest of the Americans will listen to their own citizens. Remember this, moderates, people on the middle of the road that don't have a party, they determine elections, and they listen. What are people saying? And they're going to listen to a passionate American conservatives, and they're going to go, wow, they are really pissed off for a very good reason. Truth resonates in their heart. I'm going to go on their side, whereas the Democrats have no truth. Their stuttering, stammering lies are being increasingly exposed as such. And I think the moderate Americans are going to go, no, we can't side with them because we sense the whole ship is in danger of sinking. Jim?
There's some other stories that tend to confirm what you're suggesting. Time magazine, when it names its, in the past, Man of the Year, is supposed to be the person who, for better or worse, had the greatest effect on events worldwide. Obviously, that was not climate activist Greta Thunberg, but Donald Trump. And yet they gave their Person of the Year to this teenage climate activist. Not only that, but Andy Borowitz, who's a brilliant satirist, suggests instead Trump named Person of the Year by Popular Sociopath magazine. The editors of this have to actually point out that it's satire, because too many people tend to think what Borowitz writes is supposed to be true, as though it were news. For the third year in a row, Donald J. Trump has been named Person of the Year by the magazine Popular Sociopath. The publication announced Thursday. Once a year, we at Popular Sociopath recognize the person who best epitomizes sociopathic personality disorder, which manifests in antisocial behavior and a total absence of conscience and concern for others. Harlan Doranson, the magazine's editor, said, "We're delighted to bestow this honor once again on Donald J. Trump." Doranson said Trump bested a daunting roster of competitors for the title, including the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and Trump's own son, Donald J. Trump Jr. Honestly, though, it wasn't close, the editor said. When asked why he had reached out to his son, if he had reached out to his son since surpassing him for the magazine's honor, Trump told reporters, "Why would I do that? I don't care what he thinks or feels. This is all about me." What a stupid question. Very funny. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials reveal 6 criminal cases open in Ukraine involving the Bidens. This is very serious. OAN reporter Chanel Orr has been traveling with Rudy Giuliani, reporting on his investigation in Hungary and Kiev. In a report released Sunday, she mentioned Ukrainian officials showed her 6 criminal cases involving the Bidens, Joe Biden and his son Hunter. It gets worse. Here's a news flash. Giuliani drops bombshells revealing huge money laundering operation involving Biden's Burisma. Records show prosecutor investigating Burisma was poison. This is quite stunning stuff. Meanwhile, polls show Hillary Clinton is the new 2020 Democratic front runner. This is not a joke. Shulman recently discussed the findings of a new poll showing Hillary Clinton as the Democratic front runner with a panel on Daily Blast Live. For Shulman and her Democratic compatriots, this is not a joke, but rather a serious hope. Capturing the attention was the fact that a new Harvard-Harris national poll found Hillary to be first in a hypothetical race for the Democratic nominee, according to the Washington Times. Mrs. Clinton drew 21%, followed by former Vice President Joe Biden with 20%. When registered Democrats were asked who they would support for the 2020 nomination, if she and former Secretary of State John Kerry were added to the mix. Placing third in the hypothetical was Vermont Senator Sanders at 12%, followed by Elizabeth Warren at 9% and Bloomberg at 7%. Dick Morris, a former advisor to Bill Clinton, says people should take this more seriously than they are. My feeling is that she wants to. If Biden goes away, there's an opening for her, and it looks as though Biden is indeed going away. If Hillary is polling better than declared candidates, that's terrible news for her party. Watch a video to see how hopeful some on the left are that Hillary will try one more time. But look at this. She's presented herself with a new appearance. She looks like a chipmunk. This is going to be devastating for Hillary, because having shown herself with this new appearance, she can't revert to the old Hillary, and this is going to draw more attention to her use of body doubles in the past, where I've documented her use of as many as 6 or even 8 body doubles, including during the national debates in 2016 against Bernie Sanders and even against Donald Trump. That was not Hillary Clinton. It was a younger, thinner, healthier woman who had a voice box to make her sound like Hillary Clinton. And anyone who wants to document this can go to 153news.net and watch my video entitled Fake News Issues of Identity, where I document this in spades. Scott, are you with us, my friend?
I think so.
Yeah, Scott, go.
Yeah, I was studying the Dr. Zayas picture of Hillary Clinton. Yeah, you've said it for a long time, Jim. The body double,
Right.
The cheeks are obvious. I mean, that photograph, there's something there. I could say, like I've said before, I see them pulling a Manchurian candidate in which the Democrat Party is going to assassinate someone to try and bolster them and guilt trip the rest of America into not voting for Donald Trump, not showing up, voting for Democrat. But they need people not to show up. How they do that, I think, is they're going to pull a Manchurian candidate, they're going to assassinate someone, and the person behind them is going to carry the body or carry the mantle and say, I will carry the torch. I just see it on the wall. And it's they're either going to shoot Hillary Clinton or they're going to shoot Joe Biden. Someone's going to get shot. Someone's going to get blown up. Something's going to happen, I predict. to try and desperately put, I hope it doesn't happen, but they're going to try and push someone up, because that's the only way that they could possibly win this election, unless Trump makes a major gaffe, which he won't do. So I perceive the Democrats doing that because, again, the deep state operations, the shell game of terrorist financing, the Burisma corruption, the Clinton Foundation corruption on a global scale, the Saudi Arabian, Qatar, Obama administration, George Soros agenda of destabilizing Libya, pouring migrant Africans into Europe, destabilizing Ukraine, destabilizing Syria, the war for 20 years with 7 countries in 5 years, now with the ambitions of Iran, that Trump stood against, and he said to the American people he stands against it. All of those foreign policy things are a major.
You lost your voice, Scott.
Lost you.
Okay.
Say it again.
I said all of these arguments of internationalism and interventionism has been an argument for voting for Donald Trump. And the American people are going to increasingly see that. They're going to see Libya and Syria, George Soros, Ukraine, the Libya operation in particular, because of all the African migrants that's flooded up into Europe. All of that stuff has set, I think, Europe on fire and set America on fire. And again, they're going to probably have exposure of Burisma under Rudy Giuliani's investigation and all of that. The Ukraine thing is going to evaporate, but what it is going to show is all the government corruption. Let me tell you one thing too, Jim. When I was in Hong Kong, I saw firsthand, because I met with consulate officials who told, because I said to them, well, you know, we're here doing a trip with Hong Kong and the Freedom People and the protesters, the students, we're rising with them. And the president wants to stand with these people. The president wants to advance Hong Kong and free them from the menace of Beijing, China. And the information operations need to be done to do that. You know, you're backing the president, right? And he looks and he says, well, when I said you work for the president, right? We're advancing his agenda. And the guy goes in a frowny face, in a disgusting look. He kind of goes like, wow, I just got kicked in the balls. He says, well, we kind of do our own thing here. We kind of do our own thing here. We kind of do it's like, well, he's the president of Washington. We are the Hong Kong consulate. We are the Hong Kong State Department. We understand the Hong Kong people. We do what we want here. It was the same damn song that they sang at the impeachment hearings under Schiff when they got those knuckleheads from the Ukrainian embassy, those U.S. consulate officials. The same thing with the Hong Kong guy. And I said, who's the ambassador here? And he said, oh, he's a career bureaucrat of 30 years. And I shook my head and I said to the people with me, what the hell is wrong with Trump letting people continue in ambassadors who are not his guys? He needs his guys, his people, not establishment types, but he needs his people as ambassadors to advance his agenda, precisely because of these bureaucrats not advancing his agenda, not communicating effectively. Jim?
You're absolutely right, Scott. We got a stunning development in Virginia threatening the Second Amendment sanctuaries. The governor has even talked about breaking out the National Guard. But they are adopting the Democrat strategy by creating Second Amendment sanctuary counties. They now have 80. One sheriff has even vowed to deputize citizens. Gun owners aren't going to take this line down. You have the governor saying a provision is going to be added for current gun owners, that they're going to have an assault weapons ban, but with a grandfather clause for those who own assault weapons, provided they register them. But we all know registration is a prelude to confiscation. Look at this map. All those greens are counties that are Second Amendment sanctuary counties. Bringing in the National Guard to confiscate gun or override sanctuaries could end in only one way: bloodshed. One must wonder whether the National Guard members would even comply with a governor over their friends, family, and neighbors. It's going to get ugly fast. As serious as legislators are about getting guns off the street, Virginians are equally serious about defending their right to bear arms. It's the ultimate game of chicken. It looks like we really have reached the point of my cold, dead hands. Virginia gun owners, myself included, have no intention whatsoever of complying with this gun grab. And no conciliatory, you can keep them, but you have to register them gesture is going to suffice. My only question is, who's ready to die on this hill? So he's backing down by saying registration will do in lieu of actual confiscation. The Washington state governor is following in his wake, but Virginia is forming an active militia to protect sheriffs and citizens from these unconstitutional laws. They are not going to take this lying down. They are willing to fight for the law, for the freedom, for the Second Amendment. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, we've said this for a long time, Jim, that the military and the National Guard have sympathies much more in accordance with the gun ownership clubs and culture, firing ranges. Everybody who goes to those are police or military or former military. So they're all the same people. So this notion that the Democrats think that people somehow become robots that will execute whatever order the political leader commands, like a Wizard of Oz figure, is completely asinine and mentally disturbed. It doesn't happen. I was in the Army. I was in the reserve too, as the Army, and I know when they meet, these are a very conservative, gun-cultured people, and they would not just quit. They would not just not show up. They would show up and defy any officer that gave an order by saying that's an unconstitutional order. The Second Amendment is an inviolable part of the United States Constitution for a reason, and we will not violate the United States Constitution. I don't care what some gay left-wing lawyer in San Francisco says about the Second Amendment. The people of Virginia and the Guard and the Army about Virginia say it is a constitutional right, and we will not violate the people's right for that. And in fact, they should overthrow any governor that tries to sign and implement an unconstitutional order. That's it. It's very simple. This is going to do what you said before, Jim. When they come to get your guns, the time to use them is then. That time is coming, because when they are stupid enough to try and do that, if they are dumb enough to knock on a door, you're going to have a firing, a firing situation like the
about rural communities, Scott. If they were disarmed, you could have marauding gangs coming from urban center to terrorize them, to rape them, to loot them, to kill them, and they'd be defenseless. This is insanity.
Jim, let me say one thing. We're having discussions today that Americans have never had before, which is, if they come and knock on your door, where is your escape route? Who are you aligning with? Where is your position for, sniper positions? Where do you need to build a treehouse? Where do you need to build, a cover? People are actually talking as if a war is coming, and they are preparing for their community organization and how to confront it. That shows you just how distrusting the American people really are in their core. It's a powder keg waiting to be lit.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I think we got sheriffs that are deputizing their citizens. That's the best way to go.
The sheriff is the ultimate authority figure in the community. The sheriff is elected, and the sheriff determines all of this. And one final thing, Jim, I forgot to mention, this Greta Thunberg, this girl about the Swedish, global warming and all that. That is a sign of the decrepitude of society. They're not raising her up because she's brilliant. They're raising her up, I think, out of a perverse sexual submission to some young girl. Remember, pedophilia and sexual perversion is always part of this. They're raising up this idiot who doesn't know how to spell cat, and she just regurgitates these plastic scripts, and there's nothing brilliant about her youthful position. In fact, it's a reflection of the idiocy and the stupidity and the religious worship of the environment that has become pathological in itself. Jim?
Yeah, she's been indoctrinated. She's not educated. She's been indoctrinated, too young to have any rationale about what's really happening. She had no more influence over climate change than an ant farting in the wind.
We have one more story to introduce. This is something we're going to have to discuss next week, because it's just broken the news that President Trump is issuing an executive order for 5G in our cities everywhere. I am dumbfounded by this. We know 5G is a killing field. Trump has to be either completely played over this or he's committing a colossal blunder. We'll go into this in great detail next week, but this is so startling, Scott. I had to share it with you to get your preliminary take.
Well, it's wrong. It's unconstitutional. It's a threat against people's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So it can be challenged in the Supreme Court because it is technology that causes more harm and damage to the human body than ever before. Trump is being played on this, similar to how he's been played on making an executive order that recognizes any anti-Israel political bias is somehow anti-Jewish, and he does an executive order. That's unconstitutional too, because it violates the freedom of speech. So Trump makes these mistakes, but we point him out. We say, no, that's a mistake. This is good, this is right, but this is a mistake. So we need to keep doubling down on educating him, Jim.
I agree completely. Don, I think you want to take us out, my friend.
Actually, we have 2 more minutes, so we can discuss more. But I will say this 5G, these wonderful conveniences get their energy somehow. If you take these out in the wilderness, you can't use these because the EMFs, the wavelengths are not part of nature. And
what 5G does is to combine all of the uses of these electronics, your internet, your television, your cell phone, and so with a very powerful electromagnetic field. The problem is it is so powerful, it induces nausea, brain damage. It's a killing field, and I'm just dumbfounded that Trump would go so far as to issue such an executive order. The health effects are manifest. We'll discuss them more next week, but I'm profoundly troubled. Your final thoughts?
Well, this is really a major misstep because you're dealing with something. It's like saying fentanyl is a drug that can be taken. It's like aspirin. Take fentanyl when the Chinese are doing it for biological warfare. That's one of the other things I saw in Hong Kong that was confirmed. The biological warfare against the United States of America by Chinese Communist forces is real and palpable. They're running human smuggling operations. They're bringing women over here to get born, children to make them citizens. They're paying $70,000 a pop. China is waging war against this country, and 5G is part of their technology to do it. Yes, they're also working with the Democrats like Jerry Brown, but 5G, the president needs to have scientists dissecting and examining 5G from a conservative point of view, like they've done to climate change. Climate change, they said, this is all bullshit. This is all religious fanaticism. And 5G is very dangerous. It's like making your house a microwave. That's not going to end well, Mr. President.
Continue. Don, take us out.
Yeah. Thanks for watching Truth versus News here on the 17th of December. Truth versus all kinds of official facts and acts that seem to be controlling our minds and the world, and it's all lies. So stay tuned for next week. This is just a 1-hour show this week, but tune in next week. We're going to have some real good things for Christmas, and then we'll have our annual 10 best stories
of the year
all coming up. So thank you for watching, folks. God bless.